Hello, this is Kittens Cycling in Ireland. I came out early in the morning to do a bit of tests on my Osmo Pocket 3 wide-angle lens, because currently there is no way that you can use the wide-angle lens with ND filter. I have to choose very overcast day, which is today. A normal day, everything will be too bright because I'm using 1/50 shutter speed now. And the reason why I'm sticking to this very slow shutter speed is to get this nice motion blur, which people say cinematic feeling, 24 frames a second and shutter speed 1/50. This setting is completely an eye-opener for me. It makes all the scenes so much more interesting. My eyes not hurting, and plus I'm only going like 40 kilometers per hour right now. But you can see, because of the natural motion blur, it makes me look so much faster. The official DJI Pocket 3 wide-angle lens, it doesn't allow you to use it with ND filter. So I've also ordered a third-party one where you can stack the ND filter, but that hasn't arrived yet. Now it's Dublin Airport. The usual cycle that I do, the regular cycle route that I do daily is about 40 kilometers around my house. I just take a quick picture here. By the way, the camera I'm using for quick photo shots is Ricoh GR3X. But I also recently purchased Osmo Action 6 Plus Pro-Ham iSteady gimbal to use on my bike ride. And that is one of my crucial settings, but I haven't been able to figure it out how to use it reliably on my chest or neck mount. Why I purchased Osmo 6 action camera is field of view. The field of view of action cameras is around 150 to 160 degrees. Very wide angle. However, the default Pocket 3 angle is be about this much compared to Action 6. They say it's about 90 to 95 degrees, that's the default, which is already a huge gap, like 60 degrees gap. That, especially in the field of sports, is something that makes a real difference in your footage. However, there was one biggest issue that I didn't expect before, because I was using Osmo Pocket 3. That is, stabilization doesn't work for the camera. And you might argue, all these action cameras, they provide amazing electronic image stabilization. Yes, that's true, but that only works when I put the shutter speed about 1/1000. But then, what's the big problem? I always have to set the shutter speed to 1/50 to get this amazing, exciting footage of cinematic feeling. This is always the road that I test my motion blur. You can see on the left, the branches are quite close. I'm only going 30 kilometers, 35. So I go around 40 to 50 kilometers per hour here. And you can see these slow signs that appears on the road. 시각이 너무 좁아요. 그래서 지금 현재 if you don't have motion blur, then all of these things completely go away and becomes a very, very boring footage. Then now, what could be the way to solve that? The only option is to add a real physical gimbal that can hold the action camera. Just to take a quick picture. Currently, there is no reliable way to mount that gimbal to my neck mount or my chest mount. I currently emailed Hohem that complimenting their gimbal quality and asking them, could you advise me on how to mount this to the traditional GoPro chest tee or any neck mount out there in the market. But I haven't got the replies yet because it's still Christmas holiday time. But I bet they'll say, we are sorry, but we don't have anything to support that, because on their website, the official accessories corner, there were none. So what I really need is some kind of adapter. Gimbal has 1/4-inch screw at the bottom of the handle, but you can't really mount only using the bottom because it will be very much slanted forward. So what I need is some kind of a brackety thing, adapter, so that it can hold from the middle, not from the bottom. The only option that I can look into is these 3D printing shops. There are a couple of ones that people already tried on the internet, these open source 3D printing blueprints where you can download, but it really doesn't just fit on my Hohem gimbal because there are so many different versions and each version has slightly different shape. I wonder if the coffee shop is open there today. When I enter town, my voice goes a bit low because I'm shy. Filming in the public is a really big thing, you know? You need to sometimes get out of your comfort zone. Oh, it looks like it's open. Hello, could I have just Americano, please? Oh, sorry, cappuccino.
Yeah. 340 then.
One of the extra benefits of recording in 24 frames per second cinematic, the battery lasts much longer. Much longer? Yeah, the battery lasts longer and it takes up so much less SD card storage. Hello. That was a good coffee. One other big thing that I learned by learning this video, how to set your shutter speed, iOS, and shutter 180 shutter angle, which you always multiply frame rate by 2, is that actually made this Ricoh GR3 photography a lot better. If you just see the photography, it has 2 pillars. iPhone cameras, there's a shutter speed and ISO. Cameras like mirrorless ones. The one I also have, which is Ricoh GR3X, it has another pillar, which is aperture. So when the aperture comes into play, you have to control 2 other stuff. You have to be aware of the depth of field, which means how much blurriness you're going to apply to your photo that you're taking. And also, you have to be mindful of the ISO value, because it is always the lower the ISO, the picture is better. And also I realized some of the full frame cameras from Sony or Leica, they handle iOS very well, but my Ricoh GR3, it handles well, but so-so in some cases. I try to keep it below 800. And that was the same when I was learning how to take this cinematic footage, action camera plus Osmo Pocket 3. I was told to keep the ISO below 800. And if you're not a little bit uneasy, you can go over 100, 1600. As soon as it goes over 1000-ish, the footage becomes, you notice these iOS particles, that iOS spots on your footage. So it doesn't look that great. And learning about the Pocket 3 and this videography, video footage, it kind of leads into photos. It really helped the way I do take pictures with Ricoh GR3, especially the three holy triangle of the photography: shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. The bigger the sensor is, wider aperture is, you get this fantastic shallow depth of field. You can deny that it's one of the big reasons to buy these big sensor cameras. However, you have to use this 2.0 or 2.8 aperture in big lenses carefully, with intention. You should have this feeling where if I set this amount of aperture with this lens, I'll get around and this distance, because the farther you're away from the subject, even though you open a aperture to a very bright point, you will still get a decent amount of depth of field because you are far away. The closer you are, the depth of field becomes more shallow. Let's say if you have roasties, a steak, and vegetables, and gravy sauce on top of it. If you say there are 3 potatoes, if you focus on the first potato, then the last potato's focus, it will be out of focus, which is not good. And it becomes even more severe when you're taking a picture of the many people. Like at the end of the dinner, you take picture, like celebrating the whole family gathering, then lots of people will be out of focus if you take 2.8 aperture. People shots, it is recommended to set the aperture over 5.6. As soon as I set over 5.6, focus becomes very pleasing. If you're taking picture of 15 people, then you have to align them on same distance, right? You can't align them like that. That's only allowed for phone photo. That's why one of the biggest benefit of phone, you usually take selfie like that when you're doing photo with people on the back in one line. To achieve this decent shot with that full frame or big sensor, that making everyone in the focus, the first person and to the last person at the back of the table, it will be very, very hard. You have to tighten your aperture so much. Plus, it might be almost impossible to get everyone in the focus in that situation with the length of your arm. It has to be much, much farther away. Now comes the biggest problem. The reason I didn't utilize the Ricoh GR3 to its full potential is I only used it in AV mode, which I only control the aperture, and all the other things the camera will do it for you. It was a big mistake. In Ricoh GR3, if you just use the aperture manual mode and everything auto, the shutter speed doesn't go slower than 1/50. If you tighten the aperture more than like 3 or 4, everything becomes really dark. So either you have to spike up your ISO to 6000, which will result a terrible noise in your photo, or you have to bump up the shutter speed. Make the shutter speed slower so that it absorbs more light. Shutter doesn't go slower than 1/50. That's the reason why I didn't use Ricoh GR3 that much, and it felt like I can't really control the camera. But as soon as I changed it to manual, everything changed. Because on the manual, I control aperture and shutter speed. As soon as I go below 1/50, then I can get the light, enough light to have that depth of field without really making ISO skyrocket. And it worked really, really well. So basically that is how, the more you learn about cameras and photo, I really come to like to take pictures and take videos. I'm kind of changing my video style, not like the past, meaning I speak more. Because I sometimes do a voiceover after recording, but it wasn't that nice per se. It really didn't felt that I'm in the scene, like immersive feeling. Like that's true because you're doing voiceover. Then your voice tone, excitement, all the stuff. Ooh. Take a picture of you. Even now, that horsey is a bit far away. So if I want to take a picture of everything in one shot, I'm moving away, I cross the road to get a decent focus. The setting is f6, which is good. And you can check the ISO, it's going on 100, 200-ish, which is also good. Then I might get aperture even more tightened a little bit. Yeah, that looks fine. Shutter speed 1/30. So all these things, I learned it. And it's so much fun than compared to just blindly taking picture before. I hope it doesn't chew on my saddle.